Welcome to another episode of Spotlight. Today, we'll be discussing the recent public announcement by President Donald Trump instructing Pentagon to resume nuclear testing. And he said that we will be doing that on an equal basis, indicating Russia and China as potential candidates for a similar nuclear testing resumption. First of all, it is interesting to note that he said that in the backdrop of recent missile tests in Russia, including the intercontinental ballistic missile Burevestnik, which has a range of 14,000 kilometers. But more important, as he was landing in South Korea on 30th of October, North Korea had also conducted some missile tests. So it could be simply a political response with a feeling that he needs to respond to some of these missile tests in Russia and North Korea. Or it is important to remember he also mentioned in the same social truth tweet that he's expecting China to break even in terms of nuclear assets with the United States in a matter of 5 years. And the fact that he said that on eve of his meeting with President Xi Jinping could also be seen as a comment meant to create certain amount of pressure on Chinese president in that sense. So basic question remains whether it was just a political response or is it redefining or is it an inflection point or a change in United States military strategy? And therefore, the first question that would come to our mind is whether it is going to start another nuclear arms race. It's true, and all of us know that Russia has always maintained that they will follow the suit in case the United States ever resumes physical nuclear tests. And for China, which is seen as the fastest growing in terms of nuclear and missile assets, could be an opportunity here. And indeed, many experts in India would describe it as an opportunity because from 2008, there have been questions about India's thermonuclear device test of the 5 tests that India had conducted in 1998. So, yes, it remains open to discussion, open to speculation whether it is going to start an nuclear arms race. The defining feature of whether or not it will start a nuclear arms race is his President Trump's expression saying that they will be doing that on an equal basis. What that means now, that could have at least 4 interpretations. One, the worst case scenario is that he's talking of reciprocal physical full yield nuclear tests, either in response to such tests happening in Russia and China or in anticipation that such tests are about to happen in Russia and China. The second interpretation could be that we are talking of that sense of an equal basis in terms of frequency, not necessarily the size and nature of tests, but the frequency of tests. The third interpretation then talks about matching capabilities in terms of then looking at validating the new test designs of warheads to match the actual capability among adversaries, the way United States will interpret and assess in terms of what it sees happening in China and Russia. And finally, if the focus is to match overall deterrent to make the United States secure in terms of credibility and equality of its nuclear deterrent vis-a-vis Russia or China, then perhaps the greater focus would not be on warhead testing, but greater focus could be on missile testing. But let's look at in case the first interpretation is to be true and the full yield physical nuclear tests are going to be resumed, what is the practical or pragmatic assessment in terms of timelines? Experts believe that normally in such cases of a politically motivated small test to be done, it would take at least 6 months, and that too if there is a clear emergency funding made available for such a project. But more conventional sense of doing a fully instrumented underground test with diagnostics, etc., that project could take as much as 2 years. And when we are talking of the new warheads to be designed and tested and developed, that kind of project to take could take as much as 5 years, is how experts usually believe a resumption of testing could be achieved. So, other than simply in terms of time that we just mentioned, it would also require financial allocations. It would require site preparations, and that would involve, in case of United States Congress to be involved in any such change in strategy or policy. And that brings to the board clearly what could be the political or legal constraints that President Trump might face in making sure that such a public instruction or directive to resume explosive testing of nuclear weapons is able to be implemented. First thing, of course, will be that he will need US Congress to grant financial appropriations funding for the site reactivation. In case of United States, the Nevada test site. And for that, Energy Department will have to start coordinating with the Nevada test site, which will bring these activities in public domain. And that could start a whole lot of legislative fights or even lawsuits. We have seen most of President Trump's decisions have often been challenged in courts. Indeed, the Nevada congressional delegation has already indicated that they intend, and they've signaled that they intend to block such tests from taking place once again. And then that could involve other stakeholders, for example, people who focus on environmental consequences. So we have known that all underground nuclear detonations, they have sometimes seen cases of containment failures, containment of radiation failure, and radioactive venting has happened. Sometimes groundwater has been contaminated. And of course, this creates long-term health consequences and environmental consequences. Detailed and exhaustive studies are available in case of the major test sites like Nevada or Semipalatinsk in case of Soviet Union and Russia, and the Southwest Pacific Islands as to what were the experiences of environmental and healthcare consequences of these test sites and people who lived in the vicinity. Then are there any other international constraints that United States might face other than partial test ban treaty that was enacted in 1963 that had disallowed any physical nuclear testing either over ground or in air or under oceans, had pushed all nuclear testing to underground nuclear testing. And you remember in 1998 and also in 1974, India's nuclear tests were underground nuclear tests. The only effort to even stop that kind of testing was made in 1990s when the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva was negotiating the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. And since the consensus draft could not be adopted there, the draft was adopted in September of 1996 in UN General Assembly and was laid out open for countries to sign and enact it. But of course, several countries did sign and ratify it. But in case of United States signed it, but did not ratify that because Senate did not approve ratification. And therefore, the treaty has not been enacted, and it doesn't stop United States from resuming tests. But other than strictly legal limitations, one could also talk of the spirit of law or the norms that we have evolved so far. And the strongest treaty in terms of nuclear weapons, which is often cited, is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1971, which has an Article 6 that talks about nuclear weapon powers, nuclear weapon states, which is United States, Russia, earlier Soviet Union, and United Kingdom, France, and China. Article 6 expects them to pursue disarmament in good faith. And therefore, resuming any such nuclear test by United States would be, in that sense, going against the spirit of nuclear non-proliferation treaty. And that perhaps raises the question as to, are there any other pragmatic, practical alternatives for United States to ensure constantly the credibility and sense of security vis-a-vis its nuclear adversaries? I think that again goes back to saying that perhaps the greater focus practically could be on what we call the launch systems, missiles in this case particularly, and there could be more focus on missile tests, and the nuclear warhead tests could be still kept on to subcritical or ideally zero yield or computer simulation or laboratory testing, etc. And to make these programs much more potent, these nuclear weapon states could also make their programs much more transparent so that adversaries will know as to where research and development focus is, what kind of funding is going in what areas. That itself could perhaps strengthen deterrence and make arms race a lesser of a possibility. Larger reality, of course, is one of understanding President Trump. So fundamentally, yes, it has triggered a certain concern that President Trump has spoken about resuming nuclear testing of United States. But apparently, I think it is not something that is going to happen in a hurry. And this is something that we need to, of course, keep tab on and keep looking at how these things unfold in coming months and weeks, but not something that should be a kind of issue to trigger paranoia responses from other countries. Thank you very much for listening, and we always look forward to your feedback and response to our discussions. And as we continue to bring these discussions to you in coming times, we will even look forward to your suggestions of any specific topics that you would like us to try to explicate in our discussions on this spotlight. Thank you very much and have a nice day.